The Grand Canyon is not merely a landmark. It is a wound in the earth, a scar carved by time itself, a cathedral of stone that seems eternal. A mile deep, 270 miles long, older than memory, older than history, it stretches across Arizona like a monument to eternity. By day, it is beauty itself, a spectacle of color and silence. Tourists lean over railings, breath caught in their throats, humbled by the horizon that makes them feel small and fleeting against something too vast to ever truly know. But when the sun sets, when the final light drains from the cliffs, and the shadows grow thick, the canyon transforms. Its silence ceases to be peaceful. It becomes heavy, suffocating, alive. In the darkness, you no longer stand above it. You feel as though you are inside it, swallowed whole by an abyss that does not want you to leave. Rangers know this dual nature. They warn visitors not to wander too far, not to step past the lines where maps end, not to linger in places where radios fail. For in those unmarked spaces, hikers vanish. Trails lead nowhere, caves yawn open only to be sealed again, and the canyon keeps its secrets with merciless precision. Legends swirl among the guides, stories whispered by firelight, warnings exchanged in hushed tones, caves sealed off for reasons no one explains, trails where compasses spin and GPS dies, whispers of ghostly footsteps in the desert night. To some, it is superstition. To others, survival. Because the Grand Canyon is not just a canyon. It is a labyrinth. A place where stone remembers, where silence can deceive, where entire lives are erased without a trace. And within its depths lie mysteries so disturbing that once you hear them, you will never see the Grand Canyon the same way again. So lock your doors, put on your headphones, listen closely. For after this, you will understand why the canyon is not only a wonder of the world, it is a reminder of how easily the earth itself can decide who stays and who vanishes. The death zones, where hikers disappear. Every year, millions of people step to the edge of the Grand Canyon. They take photographs, follow the trails, and trust the maps, the guardrails, the signs. But hidden among the carved ridges and sunburnt stone are places the rangers speak of only in low voices. Places where rescue is nearly impossible, where the desert itself becomes a predator. They call them the death zones. Here, temperatures soar above 110 degrees. Shade is scarce, the sun an unrelenting furnace. Trails twist into unmarked canyons like veins branching into nowhere, and even the most experienced hiker can step into a shadow and never return. Radios fail. GPS signals fade into static. In these zones, survival is not measured in hours. It shrinks down to minutes. The Grand Canyon has seen hundreds of disappearances. Most are explained: exhaustion, heat stroke, tragic falls. But there are others, cases that defy reason. Men and women who step into the canyon and simply vanish. No body, no gear, no evidence they were ever there at all. It is as if the canyon does not only kill, it erases. Take David Gabe Gonzalez. In 1982, this fit, experienced hiker set out alone. His car was discovered at the south rim, his gear still packed, untouched. Rangers searched for weeks, combing the trails, scanning the riverbanks, sending helicopters circling through the endless silence. Nothing. To this day, not a trace has ever been found. Or consider the story of Morgan Heimer, a 22-year-old river guide. In June of 2015, Morgan was leading a rafting expedition along the Colorado River near Pumpkin Springs. Witnesses saw him standing at the water's edge. Minutes later, he was gone. His group searched desperately, but no splash was heard. No cry for help. The Rangers mobilized with helicopters, divers, drones, technology, and manpower against wilderness. Yet Morgan seemed to dissolve into the canyon itself. Not a footprint, not a fragment of clothing, not even a ripple left behind. It is these vanishings, the impossible ones, that chill even the most hardened search teams. Because when there is no evidence, no trail, no closure, what are you left with but whispers? Locals speak of vanishing trails, paths that appear on maps but disappear in the land itself. Hikers tell of compasses spinning wildly, as though something deep within the canyon pulls at the needle. Some point to the Colorado River, whose currents are notorious for dragging bodies into underwater caves, hiding them in the dark, preserving them far from the sun. Others suggest something older, sealed mines, tunnels along the canyon walls, places where you could hide anything, even a body, and no one would ever find it. And while families return year after year, staring into the abyss, begging for closure, the canyon offers nothing. Only silence. Only the endless horizon. Stand at the rim at dusk and you will feel it, the air pressing against your chest, the rising wind from the depths like the breath of something unseen. You begin to understand why the rangers call them death zones. Because the Grand Canyon does not give back what it takes. The missing hikers are not statistics. They are warnings, proof that in a place this vast even daylight cannot save you. And if hikers can vanish without a trace, then what about entire civilizations? What about the tribes who disappeared from this land centuries before a single tourist stepped foot on its rim? The vanished tribes, the Anasazi and their caves. Long before the first tourist stood at the Grand Canyon's rim, long before maps and ranger stations and safety rails, this land belonged to others. For centuries, tribes like the Hopi, Zuni, Paiute, and Navajo have called the canyon sacred. To them, it is not just rock and river, it is a living place, a threshold between worlds. But older still were the ancestral Puebloans. Often called the Anasazi, they carved homes into cliffsides, built stone dwellings that seemed to grow out of the canyon walls, etched petroglyphs into rock that still whisper across the centuries. They left behind pottery, tools, and murals that show a complex, thriving society. And then, they disappeared. Entire communities abandoned, cities left silent. Historians point to famine, drought, conflict. But the completeness of their vanishing troubles, scholars even now, how does an entire people vanish into the desert without a trace? The canyon holds fragments of their mystery in its caves. Some chambers contain murals depicting figures part human, part animal, part something else entirely, figures that seem to belong to another world. To many, they look like records of encounters with forces we cannot explain. And then came 1909. The Arizona Gazette published a story that would electrify readers and cast a shadow that lingers still. It told of an explorer, G.E. Kincaid, who claimed to have stumbled upon a massive underground city hidden in the canyon walls. He described chambers stretching for hundreds of yards, filled with artifacts and statues that looked nothing like anything native to the Americas. Hieroglyphs covered the walls. Copper weapons and mummies sat arranged as though in eternal meditation. Some of the relics, Kincaid said, resembled Egyptian culture more than anything else. The story claimed the Smithsonian itself had stepped in, quietly sealing the site and denying its existence. No record of Kincaid remains in their archives. No artifacts. Nothing but silence. Many dismiss it as a hoax, an imaginative tale to sell papers, but others point out the detail in the reporting, the interviews with supposed Smithsonian representatives, the careful precision of the descriptions. Why would a respected paper invent such a story? And why did the Smithsonian not simply disprove it, but instead retreat into silence? The Hopi speak of Sipapu, a sacred opening in the earth from which their ancestors emerged into this world. They also warn of caves that must never be entered, doors that belong to spirits, not to the living. Modern explorers who've ignored those warnings have reported feelings of dread, of being watched, of sudden illness that forced them to leave. Some have found entrances reinforced with stone and concrete, sealed as though to hide something or protect us from it. Official history insists that famine and drought explain the Anasazi's disappearance. But the canyon whispers another possibility, that the people did not simply die, but migrated into the earth itself or into places we are not meant to see. Stand at the base of those cliffs, where ancient steps still climb upward toward nowhere, and you feel the weight of that silence. The canyon does not merely bury history. It swallows it whole. The Anasazi caves are not just ruins. They are reminders that the Grand Canyon has erased entire civilizations before and may do so again. The river guide who vanished in calm waters, John Daggett, 1993. By the early 1990s, John Daggett was more than a river guide. He was a guardian of the Colorado River. Tourists entrusted him with their lives, following his steady voice through rapids that could shred rafts and drag the strongest swimmers beneath the current. To his friends, he was careful, methodical, at home in the canyon's shadows. He respected the water, and the water seemed to respect him. Until it did not. June 1993. The canyon was quiet, its walls rising like ancient cathedrals of stone. Daggett and a small group of adventurers camped along a calmer stretch of the Colorado. Dawn broke slow and gold across the cliffs, and the river whispered by, glassy and calm. Witnesses remember John preparing gear by the water's edge. He stepped aside, pacing near the shoreline. And then he was gone. At first, the group thought he had slipped, but no splash echoed, no cry for help pierced the silence. The Colorado was calm that morning, too calm to conceal a drowning. John was an expert swimmer, always cautious, always wearing the right gear, but in that moment, before his group's disbelieving eyes, he vanished, as though the canyon itself had closed over him. Panic rippled through the camp. Rangers were called, helicopters tore across the sky, rescue boats dragged the river, divers searched beneath the surface. Weeks passed. The search stretched for miles. Yet not a shoe, not a rope, not a fragment of his equipment was ever found. For many, that was the most disturbing part. Most drowning victims resurface eventually, carried downstream, their belongings scattered along the banks. But John Daggett left nothing. It was as if he had been erased. Theories multiplied. Some whispered of hidden currents, secret tunnels beneath the river that pulled him into the canyon's dark veins. Others suggested a darker explanation, that he had walked away, leaving behind his life in silence. But those who knew John rejected that idea. He loved the canyon, but he did not fear it. He would not abandon it or himself so suddenly. Among river guides, his story became a legend, repeated on long nights when rafts bobbed beneath starlight. They say the canyon shows him that some places along the river are not just dangerous but hungry. Guides warn the new ones. Never wander alone at dusk. Never drift too close to the shadowed bends. Because the canyon keeps what it wants. Even now, if you stand on the riverbank where John was last seen, the silence is heavier. The water flows smooth, almost too smooth, concealing whatever lies beneath. Stare too long, and you feel it, that impossible weight, as if the canyon remembers and reminds you no one is beyond its reach. The disappearance of John Daggett remains unsolved. His body never found. His story not forgotten. A warning carried by the current, whispered by those who still guide strangers through the Colorado's treacherous veins. Respect the canyon, because it has taken before, and it will take again. The sealed chambers, the Kincaid Cave controversy. On April 5, 1909, the Arizona Gazette published a story that would ignite more than a century of speculation. Its headline spoke of discovery, but its words carried the weight of something far stranger, an underground city hidden within the Grand Canyon itself. The explorer was named G.E. Kincaid. He claimed to have stumbled upon a cave entrance high in the canyon walls, nearly 2,000 feet above the Colorado River. Inside, he found not just a cavern, but a labyrinth of passageways stretching for hundreds of yards. Within those stone corridors, he said, were chambers filled with artifacts that defied explanation. Copper weapons, stone tablets covered in unfamiliar symbols, statues carved with features that resembled not Native Americans, but figures of ancient Egypt and Asia. The most shocking detail came from what Kincaid described as the central chamber. Dozens of mummified bodies arranged in a cross-legged position, as though caught in eternal meditation. He painted a picture not of a shelter, but of a city buried within the canyon itself, a civilization preserved in stone. The Gazette claimed that the Smithsonian Institution had quietly stepped in, sending a team to investigate. But when pressed, the Smithsonian denied everything. No records of Kincaid, no artifacts, No mention of a discovery that should have rewritten history. Just silence. Some dismiss the story as a hoax, a tall tale meant to sell newspapers in an age when lost civilizations fascinated the public. But others point out the odd precision of the reporting. The Gazette article was not written like a legend or a fable. It included measurements, detailed descriptions, and even supposed interviews with Smithsonian representatives. Too careful, too specific to be brushed aside as mere fantasy. And then there are the sealed caves. Hikers and explorers have long spoken of certain openings in the canyon walls, blocked with heavy stonework, reinforced as though to keep something hidden or to keep people out. Rangers dismiss these as safety closures, nothing more. Yet, the rumors persist. Local tribes add their own warnings. The Hopi speak of the canyon as a place of emergence and return, a threshold between worlds. They tell of forbidden caves where spirits dwell, entrances that lead into places not meant for the living. To stumble into such a space, they warn, is to trespass against forces older than memory itself. So what did Kincaid find? If the story is true, why would such a discovery vanish into silence? Was it because the truth was too disruptive, too unsettling, or was it because some knowledge was never meant to surface? Stand along the canyon's sheer cliffs and you will see them. Dark openings scattered across the stone, mouths that lead into blackness. Most are small, some are sealed, but a few still gape wide enough to swallow you whole. Could one of them still hold the chambers Kincaid described? Could the canyon itself be hiding not just secrets of vanished hikers, but entire civilizations erased from the record? The Kincaid Cave controversy remains one of the canyon's greatest mysteries. Too detailed to dismiss, too strange to explain, and too persistent to forget. Phantom Ranch, where the dead walk. Deep in the canyon's heart, where the Bright Angel Trail meets the Colorado River, there lies a place many consider a refuge, Phantom Ranch. To weary hikers, it is a gift in the wilderness, simple cabins, a canteen, a rare bed beneath a roof before facing the endless stone again. By day, it is an oasis, but by night, the ranch becomes something else entirely. For generations, Phantom Ranch has carried stories, tales whispered by rangers, confessed by hikers, retold by workers who swear they will never stay another night there. Stories of a presence that lingers, footsteps that echo when no one walks, and figures that vanish the instant you dare to look twice. The legends stretch back to the 1920s, when a worker hanged himself near the ranch. Some say his spirit never left. Guests report waking in the dead of night to find a man standing at the foot of their beds, silent, unmoving, watching. Others hear the heavy thud of boots pacing outside their cabins long after curfew, only to open the door and find the paths empty, the air still. One ranger swore that as he locked up the canteen one night, he heard laughter behind him. Not bright, not human, but low, guttural, echoing. When he spun around, there was only darkness. Another told of radios that hiss with static whenever he walked a particular stretch of trail, followed by footsteps pacing in time with his own, just out of sight. Even hikers passing through bring their own accounts. A woman once described a lantern bobbing along the cliffside trail above the ranch, yet no night hikes were allowed, and no one appeared. Another group swore they heard screams echoing across the cliffs at 2 a.m, screams that stopped all at once, swallowed by the silence. Skeptics dismiss these as exhaustion, dehydration, the tricks of a restless mind after days in the canyon's heat, but what makes Phantom Ranch's stories harder to ignore is their consistency. Year after year, decade after decade, hikers and rangers describe the same encounters, the same figure at the bedside, the same boots on the gravel, the same voice in the dark. Even the name itself, Phantom Ranch, feels less like a poetic choice and more like a warning. A reminder that the canyon does not forget those who die within its walls, that some who enter never leave, not even in death. Spend one night there and you will feel it for yourself. The walls seem to press closer, the silence heavier, as if the canyon itself is leaning in to listen. And when the footsteps start outside your cabin, echoing slow and steady in the dirt, you will understand why the rangers never laugh off the stories. Phantom Ranch is not just a place to rest. It is a reminder the canyon does not always let go of those it takes. Summit keeps walking. Forever. The Vanishing of Chris Fowler, 2016. In the fall of 2016, Chris Fowler, known to friends as Sherpa, was living his dream. At 34, he was trekking the legendary Pacific Crest Trail, a 600-mile journey stretching from Mexico to Canada. He thrived on the solitude of the wild, his wide-brimmed hat shading a face that was almost always smiling. Along the trail, he took photographs, shared stories, and became a symbol of persistence and joy in the outdoors. But the dream unraveled as the trail carried him toward the Grand Canyon's vast web of crossings and feeder routes. On October 12th, near White Pass in Washington, Chris was last seen. Other hikers remembered him as cheerful, steady, his boots moving with the confidence of someone who had already conquered thousands of miles. Someone even snapped a photo of him that morning, his final photograph. By evening, Chris was gone. The search for him was immediate and intense. Rangers, helicopters, tracking dogs, volunteers, all scoured the trails and canyons, their voices echoing into silence. Flyers were posted, families pleaded, searchers pressed deeper into the wilderness, but nothing surfaced. No pack, no scraps of clothing, no gear, not even a broken branch to suggest where he had gone. What chills those who remember Chris's case is not just the loss, it is the absolute absence of evidence. The Grand Canyon's trail system is deceptive. A network of switchbacks and side paths that can swallow even the most seasoned outdoorsmen. Weather shifts without warning. Rockfalls cut off routes. A wrong turn can end in a sheer drop. Shouts vanish into the canyon's throat before they reach another ear. And yet, even in the deadliest conditions, searchers usually find something. But with Chris, there was only silence. His family refused to let go. Year after year, they returned to the canyon, organizing search parties, urging new hikers to keep their eyes open for any sign of him. Online forums buzzed with theories. Some believed he fell into the Colorado River, his body claimed by currents that drag the dead into underwater caves. Others thought he was caught in a sudden storm, buried beneath stone. A few even whispered that he chose to vanish, stepping deliberately into oblivion. But none of those theories explain the void. None account for how a man could simply step off a trail in daylight and cease to exist. That final photograph of Chris Fowler lingers, a smiling man on the edge of one of America's wildest landscapes, his journey nearly complete, his life swallowed just as suddenly as so many before him. To see that picture now is to look at a ghost in the making, a man alive in one frame, erased in the next. Stand on those trails today, and you will feel it. The endless switchbacks that double back into shadows. The silence that presses close. The sensation that the canyon itself is watching. And when you think of Chris Fowler, you realize he is not alone. He is one of many who stepped into the canyon's depths and never returned. The disappearance of Chris Fowler is not just a tragedy. It is a reminder the Grand Canyon does not care for dreams or journeys or promises. It keeps what it wants, and in return, it leaves nothing but silence. 6 mysteries, 1 canyon that never lets go. The Grand Canyon is hailed as one of the wonders of the world, a cathedral carved by time and river. But beneath its beauty lies a darker truth, a legacy of vanishings and voices that refuse to be silenced. 6 stories, 6 warnings, etched into its walls. The hikers swallowed by the death zones, stepping off trails that never led back. The vanished tribes, the Anasazi, whose dwellings still cling to cliffs, their lives abandoned to silence, their fate whispered through sealed caves. The river guide, John Daggett, who vanished before witnesses in calm waters where no current should have claimed him. The sealed chambers of the Kincaid Cave controversy, a tale too detailed to be fantasy, too inconvenient to be acknowledged. Phantom Ranch, where footsteps fall on gravel long after midnight, and figures linger at the bedsides of strangers. And Chris Fowler, the modern hiker, smiling in his last photograph before being erased by the canyon's shifting shadows. Each story is a thread. Together, they weave a picture that is both mesmerizing and terrifying. The Grand Canyon does not simply take. It erases. It swallows hikers, guides, tribes, even history itself. What is left behind is not evidence, not closure, but silence, an abyss that stares back when you dare to look too long. Families still come. They stand at the rim, staring into the vastness, begging for answers that never surface. Guides still whisper warnings on night journeys. Locals still tell of trails that twist into nowhere, of caves that breathe cold air as if something inside is alive. And still, the canyon keeps its secrets. Ask yourself, which mystery haunts you most? The death zones where the air itself seems cursed, the tribes who vanished into caves sealed by stone, the worker who still paces the grounds of Phantom Ranch, or the hikers whose final moments are lost to silence. But be careful. Curiosity is a dangerous gift here. In the Grand Canyon, knowledge is not always given freely. Sometimes, the price of an answer is to become part of the mystery yourself. The Grand Canyon is not only a monument to time, it is a monument to the unexplained. A reminder that America's wilderness is not tamed, that some places still belong to forces older than history. And perhaps, even now, the canyon is watching, waiting to decide whose story it will take next.